The car was not moving. 3 seconds ago, it had been moving, sliding through the golden morning city with the quiet confidence of a vehicle that belonged to the most powerful man in 3 countries. Now it was stopped, boxed in, surrounded on every side by large black vehicles with tinted windows and no license plates that had appeared from nowhere with the coordinated precision of something that had been planned long before this morning. Zara sat in the rear seat with the phone pressed to her ear and the hidden object in her right hand, and her dark eyes moving. Left window, right window, front windscreen, rear window, reading every angle of the trap around her without stopping for a single second. The voice on the phone was still speaking. Calm, educated, patient. "Hello, Your Royal Highness," it said again. "Please do not hang up, and please do not attempt anything heroic. My men outside your vehicle are professionals. There are 8 of them. I would hate for this to become unpleasant." Zara said nothing. Her eyes counted the dark shapes moving outside the tinted glass. 4 approaching from the front, 2 on the left, 2 more closing in from behind. 8, exactly as the voice said. The driver's hands were white on the steering wheel. "What do we do?" he said under his breath. His voice was controlled, but barely. "Nothing yet," Zara said quietly. She was looking at the black SUV directly in front of them, the one that had stopped and was now sitting like a wall across the entire lane. Its engine was running. Its windows were completely dark. "Stay in the vehicle." She pressed the phone back to her ear. "Who are you?" she said. "Someone who has been watching you for a very long time," the voice said. "Someone who knows exactly who you are. Not Amara the maid. Not the woman who hid in a Korean crime lord's mansion for 18 months. The real you." A pause that was perfectly timed. Theatrical. "Princess Zara Adaeze, firstborn of King Emmanuel, rightful ruler of the Kova kingdom. If you know who I am," Zara said, "then you know that capturing me solves nothing. The international community has already recognized my claim. Cade is in custody. Whatever you are trying to accomplish." "Cade," the voice said, and something shifted in its tone, something that might have been contempt, was a useful instrument. Nothing more. His failure was always a possibility I had planned for. Another pause. "I want you to step out of the vehicle. Come with my men. And I promise that the Korean and his daughter will not be touched." Zara's jaw tightened. She looked at the driver. She looked at the 8 dark shapes surrounding the car. She looked at the city, ordinary and golden and completely oblivious, continuing its mourning outside the invisible walls of this trap. She had 60 seconds before those men reached the car doors. Maybe less. "Tell me one thing," she said into the phone. "How did you know my route? How did you know exactly when I was leaving and which vehicle I was in?" The voice almost smiled. She could hear it. "Someone close to you told me," it said simply. "Someone who has been close to you for longer than you know." The line went dead. Zara lowered the phone. Someone inside the Kwan estate had given her up. She did not have time to process that now. She filed it away in the place where she kept things that had to wait, sealed and precise and not forgotten. And she looked at the driver one final time. "When I open this door," she said, "you call Don Lucian. You tell him the highway. You tell him now." "He already knows," the driver said. His eyes moved to the rear view mirror with something that might have been relief. "Look." Zara looked. Far behind them, visible through the rear window past the 2 closing black vehicles, blue and white lights. Not police. Something else. 3 large black vehicles cutting against the flow of frozen traffic, moving fast, changing lanes with controlled aggression that only came from people who knew exactly where they were going. She had 60 seconds. She opened the door herself. And if you are back for part 2, welcome. If this is your first time, go watch part 1 first because you need to see where this began. Hit that subscribe button right now. This is going to be intense from start to finish. Let's go. What happened in the next 90 seconds on that highway was not what the men surrounding the car had been briefed to expect. The woman who stepped out was not afraid. She was not surrendering. She stepped from the vehicle with her feet planted wide and her dark eyes open and reading everything in one sweeping instant. Distance to each figure, angle of approach, position of the blocking vehicles, the half-second hesitation in the nearest tactical figure who had not expected her to come out voluntarily. That hesitation was all she needed. She moved left, fast and low, closing the distance to the nearest figure before he could recalibrate. She caught his arm, turned his own momentum against him, drove him off balance, and used his falling body as cover while she pivoted toward the second figure approaching from her right. She caught his wrist at the exact point that dropped him to one knee. The third figure grabbed for her from behind, and she ducked, spun, and drove her elbow back with precise force. The specific force of someone who had been trained for exactly this. She was outnumbered. She knew that. But she was also buying time. The remaining 5 figures were closing in fast from every direction. She moved backward toward the car, keeping the vehicle at her back, limiting the angles they could attack from, making them funnel toward her one at a time rather than swarming. Her breathing was controlled. Her dark eyes were cold and completely focused. 3 years of running and hiding had not softened what she had been trained to be. She held them for 40 seconds. She got the 60 she needed, because the 3 black vehicles from the far end of the highway had arrived. They came in hard, cutting across lanes, tires biting the road surface as they fanned out in a practiced formation that blocked every exit route simultaneously. Before Segan's operatives could process what was happening, there were armed men on all sides of them. Not aggressive, not reckless, but positioned with the calm, absolute certainty of people who do this professionally and have done it many times before. The situation reversed in under 30 seconds. And from the passenger door of the lead vehicle, moving across the stopped highway with the composed, urgent certainty of a man who has never in his life been too late for anything that mattered, came a powerfully built, full Korean man, age 39, fair, smooth East Asian skin, straight jet black hair, wind-disturbed, dark almond-shaped eyes locked forward, and finding Zara across 50 feet of open highway in less than 1 second. Don Lucian walked through the middle of all of it, through his men, through the stopped vehicles, through the frozen morning, without breaking stride. He stopped 3 feet in front of her. She was breathing hard. Her dark jacket was torn at the shoulder. Her thick, jet black hair had completely escaped its bun and was falling around her face. A bruise was forming on her left cheekbone from the struggle. She had never looked more like herself. "You are late," she said. Something crossed his face. Almost a smile. "Traffic," he said. She held out the phone, still warm from the unknown caller. "Someone gave them my route," she said. Her voice was steady. Her dark eyes were not. "Someone from inside your estate. They knew everything. The vehicle, the time, the exact road." Don Lucian took the phone. He looked at it. His jaw tightened slightly, the only visible sign of what that information was doing inside him. "We need to move," he said. "We finish this conversation somewhere that is not an open highway." "Agreed," she said. His men were securing Segan's operatives efficiently around them. The morning city watched from a distance. Ordinary people stopped, and staring at something they could not name. Don Lucian looked at Zara one more time. A look that checked every visible inch of her for damage with the efficiency of someone who needed to know she was intact before he could fully function. And then he turned and walked with her back toward his vehicle. His hand found the small of her back for exactly 3 seconds as they walked. Neither of them mentioned it. Back at the mansion, the atmosphere had changed. It was not loud. It was the opposite of loud. It was the specific quiet of a place where everyone knows something serious has happened and nobody is speaking above what is necessary. Don Lucian's people moved through the corridors with the clipped efficiency of a machine that had shifted into a higher gear. Phones were answered in low voices. Doors closed with purpose. The ordinary rhythm of the household had been replaced by something that hummed with controlled urgency. Suwa was sitting on the bottom step of the grand staircase when they came through the front door. She had her small pale hands folded in her lap, and her large dark almond-shaped eyes fixed on the entrance with the particular stillness of a child who has decided that if she sits very still and watches the door hard enough, the people she needs will come through it. When Zara walked and Suwa stood up, she did not run. She walked, quickly but with a dignity that was entirely her own, across the entrance hall, and stopped in front of Zara and looked up at her with a face that was trying very hard to be brave and not entirely succeeding. "You came back," Suwa said. "I told you I would," Zara said. "You also told me everything was going to be all right," Suwa said. "And then they put cars around your car. And then your father came," Zara said. Suwa considered this. "He left very fast," she said. "He did not say goodbye to me. He never leaves without saying goodbye." She looked up with those enormous eyes. He must have been very scared. Don Lucian, standing behind Zara, said nothing. His face showed nothing. Suwa looked past Zara at her father. She studied his face with the complete unself-conscious accuracy of a child who has not yet learned that adults prefer not to be seen too clearly. You were scared, Appa, she said. It was not a question. I was concerned, Don Lucian said. That is what scared looks like on your face, Suwa said simply. The entrance hall was very quiet. Zara looked at the floor briefly. The corner of her full lips moved in a way she did not allow to become a smile. Not because it was not funny, but because she understood instinctively that this was not her moment to smile. Don Lucian crouched down to Sua's level. He took her small face in his large hands the way he almost never did, direct and deliberate and completely present. Everything is going to be all right, he said. I promise you. Sua looked at him seriously. You said I should never make a promise I cannot keep. I know, he said. So you are sure, she said. I am sure, he said. She nodded once, small and grave and satisfied. Then she put her small arms around his neck and held on. He closed his eyes and held his daughter in the entrance hall of his mansion, and over her small dark-haired head his gaze found Zara across the distance. Zara was watching them. Her large dark eyes were very still and very bright. She looked away first. They worked through the night. Don Lucian's forensic team pulled everything they could from the phones of the captured operatives, call logs, location data, encrypted messages that took 4 hours to crack. What they found confirmed what Zara already knew. This operation had been planned for months. The route, the vehicle, the timing, all of it delivered from inside the estate with precision that only came from someone who had regular access to Don Lucian's operational decisions. Someone who had been trusted completely. But the messages pointed upward, to a handler, to a network, to money, and the money was the thread they pulled. Through the night, Don Lucian's people followed it. Through shell companies, through offshore accounts, through layers of financial architecture so sophisticated it had clearly been built by someone with both resources and patience. At 3 in the morning they hit a name. Don Lucian sat with it for a long time without speaking. Zara was across the desk from him, still awake, still working, her dark eyes sharp despite the hour. She watched his face change as he read the file his people had compiled, and she recognized the expression, not shock, because men like Don Lucian did not do shock, but something colder and more specific. The expression of a man who has just confirmed something he hoped he was wrong about. What is it? She said. He turned the file toward her across the desk. She read it. The network was connected to the Kova kingdom, to royalty, to someone with deep knowledge of the palace's internal security, the diplomatic relationships, the legal structures of succession. Someone who had known exactly when and how to strike 3 years ago. Someone who had stayed invisible while Cade took all the risk, feeding the general intelligence, funding his forces, managing the international silence that allowed a coup to go unchallenged. Someone who was not finished. The financial trail was still active. Payments still moving. The network had not gone dormant when Cade was arrested. It had simply shifted direction. Toward Zara. Toward the highway. Toward whatever came next. Whoever this is, Zara said quietly. They were behind Cade from the beginning. Cade was not the architect. He was the weapon. She looked up from the file. Someone used him. And when he failed, they moved directly. And they had someone inside my estate feeding them everything they needed, Don Lucian said. They looked at each other across the desk. Can your people trace it further? Zara said. They already are, Don Lucian said. By morning we will have a face. Morning came cold and gray. Don Lucian's forensic team delivered their final report at 6. He read it alone first, standing at the window of his office with the file in his hand and the gray city outside, and an expression on his face that did not move for a long time. Then he went to find Zara. She was in the kitchen. Of course she was. She had made tea. Real tea, the kind that took time, the kind that was an act of patience and intention, and she was standing at the counter with both hands wrapped around a cup when he came through the door. She took one look at his face and set the cup down. Tell me, she said. He set the file on the counter in front of her. She looked at it. She read it. She read it again. The name, the photographs, the evidence, the trail going back not 3 years but 5. 2 full years before the coup, when the planning had already begun, when the money had already started moving, when a person she had known her entire life had looked at the Kova kingdom and decided it belonged to them. Her face went very still. She recognized the name. She recognized the face in the photographs. And the recognition was the worst part. Not shock, not disbelief. but the specific devastating quality of a truth that some part of her had always known and had refused to look at directly, because looking at it would mean that the world was even more broken than she had allowed herself to believe. "My uncle," she said. Her voice was very quiet, very controlled. "Prince Zara Adaeze," Don Lucian said. "Your father's younger brother. He has been behind every piece of this from the beginning. The coup, Kate, the 3 years of hunting you, the highway." He paused. "He is currently in the country. He arrived 4 days ago on a private aircraft registered to one of his shell companies. He has been here the entire time." Zara looked at the photograph in the file. A tall black African man, age 56, broad-shouldered, well-dressed, with a wide, easy smile that she had seen at every royal celebration of her childhood. A man who had held her hand at her father's funeral and wept. A man whose weeping she had believed with her whole heart, because some lies are only possible from the people we love most. "Where is he?" she said. Don Lucian looked at her carefully. "Zara, where is he?" she said again. Her voice had not risen. It had done the opposite, dropped into a register that was completely flat and completely certain. The voice of a woman who has crossed the last border between grief and decision. "He is at a private residence 40 minutes from here," Don Lucian said. "Rented under a false identity. My people have had eyes on the location for the past 2 hours." "Then we go," she said. "It is not that simple," Don Lucian said. "He will have protection." He knew Cade was compromised. He has had days to prepare. Going directly to that location without a plan is exactly what he would expect and exactly what he wants. Zara looked at him. "Then give me a plan," she said. "You are very good at plans." Don Lucian was quiet for 3 seconds. "Then, I already have one." The operation was precise and fast, and left nothing to chance. Don Lucian deployed 12 men across 3 vehicles, not to the front of the private residence, but to every exit point simultaneously. Every road out, every possible escape route covered before a single vehicle approached the front gate. The timing was coordinated to the minute. Zara was in the lead vehicle. Don Lucian had not asked her to stay behind. He had looked at her face in the kitchen and understood immediately that asking would be a waste of both their time. She sat beside him in the rear seat with the stillness of someone who has compressed everything they are feeling into something small and dense and completely controlled. The specific stillness of a woman going somewhere she has been building toward for 3 years. They did not speak much on the drive. At one point Don Lucian said, quietly, without looking at her, "Whatever happens in there, whatever he says to you, he is trying to destabilize you. It is what he does. It is how he operates." "I know," Zara said. "He will make it personal." "It is personal," she said. "Yes," Don Lucian said. "But you cannot let it make you small. You are not small." She looked at him. In the moving car, in the gray morning light, with 12 men in 3 vehicles surrounding them and a man from her past 40 minutes away. She looked at this Korean Mafia boss who had given his daughter's chosen made a file on her enemy at 3 in the morning and who had walked across 50 feet of hostile highway to reach her without a second of hesitation. "Thank you," she said, quietly, meaning all of it. He nodded once. The car kept moving. They found Prince Zara Adaeze in the garden of the private residence, sitting at an outdoor table with tea and documents as though this was an ordinary morning and not the morning his entire carefully constructed world was ending. He looked up when Zara came through the garden gate. He did not look surprised. He looked, and this was the thing that hit her hardest, harder than the anger, harder than the grief. He looked pleased to see her. The same wide, easy smile. The same warm eyes that had fooled her completely for 30 years. "Zara," he said. He rose from his chair. "You look well, considering." She stopped 10 feet from him. Don Lucian's men were at every exit. Don Lucian himself stood slightly behind and to her left, present, watchful, giving her the space to lead this. "Sit down, uncle," she said. Something flickered in Segan's eyes at the word uncle coming from her in that tone. He sat. "You have been busy," he said pleasantly. "Taking down Kate. Surviving the highway. I will admit that surprised me. The Korean's response time was faster than I calculated." He glanced briefly at Don Lucian. "You are as efficient as they say." Don Lucian said nothing. "Why?" Zara said. Segan looked at her. "You know why. I want to hear you say it." He was quiet for a moment. The garden around them was still and gray. "Your father was a great king," Segan said. "He was also the younger son. Did you know that? Before your grandfather changed the succession laws, The throne would have passed to the eldest, to my father, not yours. Everything that should have been ours was taken by a change of law. He paused. I spent my entire life watching your family sit on a throne that belonged to mine. Smiling, attending the ceremonies, playing the loyal younger brother, waiting. He looked at Zara directly. I'm not a patient man by nature. Waiting cost me everything. It cost you more than you know, Zara said. Perhaps, Segan said. But the kingdom is mine, Zara said. It has always been mine, and it will remain mine after today. Segan looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, quietly, with something that might almost have been genuine, you are exactly like your father. I know, Zara said. He was a great king. She turned to Don Lucian. She nodded once. Don Lucian made one call. 30 seconds later, 2 vehicles arrived at the residence gate. Not his people this time. International authorities. Badges and documents, and the formal machinery of justice that his contacts had positioned and waiting for exactly this moment. Prince Zara Adaeze watched them come through the gate with the expression of a man who had always known this was one of the possible endings and had simply hoped for a different one. He did not resist. He stood. He straightened his jacket. He looked at Zara one final time across the garden table. For what it is worth, he said, I never wanted you harmed. Only removed. I know, Zara said. That is not the comfort you think it is. They took him. Zara watched until the vehicles were gone through the gate. Then she turned away and looked at the gray sky above the garden and breathed. One long, slow breath that carried 3 years and 30 years and everything she had held for all of it. Don Lucian stepped beside her. He did not speak. He did not offer words that this moment did not need. He simply stood beside her in the gray garden while the sky began, slowly, from the east, to lighten. After a long time she said, It is over. It is over, he said. She looked at him sideways. All of it. Every piece. Every piece, he confirmed. She nodded. She breathed again. And then, because she was Zara Adaeze and she had been running for 3 years and surviving for 30, and she was done with both, she turned to face him fully in the lightning garden, and she said what she had been not saying since the day she stood in his office and told him the truth. I do not want to go back to the Kova kingdom alone, she said. Don Lucian looked at her. Really looked, with those dark almond-shaped eyes that missed nothing and showed only what they chose to show. You do not have to, he said. Suwa needs. Suwa chose you before any of this, he said. She has not changed her mind. She will not. Zara looked at him. And you? He was quiet for exactly the right amount of time. Not hesitating. Deciding. I went across a highway full of armed men for a woman I employed as a maid, he said. I think my position is clear. She laughed. It was sudden and full and real. The laugh that could be heard 3 courtyards away. The laugh from the stories she had told Suwa in the warm lamplight. The laugh of the queen she had always been. It broke across the gray garden like something bright. Don Lucian watched her laugh, and something in his face opened completely. Unguarded, unmanaged, entirely real. He reached out and took her hand. She held it. They found out about Min Jun that evening. Don Lucian's team had been cross-referencing the financial evidence from Segan's network against internal estate records all day. The payment trail was sophisticated, routed through multiple accounts, timed to look like legitimate transfers, but it was there. 47 payments over 2 years. Accessed every time from within the estate walls. Don Lucian read the name at the bottom of the report and sat completely still for 30 seconds. Min Jun, 11 years. He had trusted this man for 11 years. Min Jun had stood in his office, sat at his table, carried Suwa on his shoulders when she was small enough to be carried. He had been present for every significant moment of the past decade. Loyal, efficient, indispensable. And for 2 of those years, he had been feeding information to the man who wanted Zara dead. He had given them her route, her time, her vehicle. He had sent her onto that highway knowing exactly what was waiting. Don Lucian made one call. His voice when he made it was very quiet and very final. The voice that did not need to be loud because the weight of it was sufficient. He did not see Min Jun again. Zara found him afterwards sitting alone in his office with the report on the desk in front of him and the lamp burning low and the night quiet around him. She came in without knocking. She had stopped knocking some time ago, and she sat across from him and looked at his face. She did not offer him words that the moment did not need. She slid her hand across the desk. He looked at it for a moment. Then he placed his hand over hers. 11 years, he said quietly. I know, she said. I did not see it. Neither did I, she said. And I am trained to see things. He was quiet. Then Suwa liked him. Suwa also chose a maid over 5 millionaires, Zara said. Her instincts are better than both of ours when it matters. Something moved through his face that was not quite a smile, but was close. They sat together in the quiet office for a long time. Outside the window, the city continued its indifferent evening. Lights and movement, and the ordinary life of people who had no idea that a kingdom had been restored today and a traitor revealed, and two people who had been circling each other for months had finally stopped circling. After a long time, Suwa appeared in the doorway. Straight jet black pigtails, slightly loose. Pale pink dress, slightly wrinkled from the day. Large dark eyes moving from her father to Zara and back again, with the specific calculation of a 7-year-old who is assessing a situation and finding it satisfactory. Are you both sad? She asked. A little, Don Lucian said. Is Zara staying? Suwa asked. Don Lucian looked at Zara. Zara looked at Suwa. I have a kingdom to go home to, she said. Suwa's face did something complicated. But, Zara continued, a queen can choose where she builds her palace. And I have been thinking that the Kova kingdom could use a very good advisor. She paused. And his daughter? Suwa stared at her. Us. You, Zara said. If you want. Suwa turned to her father with an expression of pure urgent interrogation. Appa, do we want? Don Lucian looked at his daughter. Then at Zara. Then at his daughter again. Yes, he said. We want. Suwa crossed the office in 4 rapid steps and climbed into Zara's lap with the complete confidence of someone who has been doing this their whole life and intends to continue. She settled herself, tucked her dark head under Zara's chin, and sighed the deep, satisfied sigh of a 7-year-old whose plan has finally worked out exactly as she intended. Zara wrapped both arms around the small Korean girl. Don Lucian watched them from across the desk. His daughter. The woman his daughter had chosen first. The family that had assembled itself around a decision made by a 7-year-old who saw something true when no one else was looking. He stood. He walked around the desk. He sat beside Zara on the same side. Close, present, his shoulder against hers. Suwa, from inside Zara's arms, reached out and took her father's hand without looking at him. As if it was the most natural thing in the world. As if they had always sat like this in the lamplight of a quiet room. As if this was already home. She came to hide her crown. She mopped his floors. She carried his trays. She swallowed her dignity for 18 months in a gray uniform with a white apron and a name that was not her own. And a 7-year-old girl with sad dark eyes and white ribbons in her pigtails looked up from the bottom of a grand staircase and saw, clearly, simply, without doubt, exactly who she was. She was never just a maid. She was always a queen. And the people who deserved to stand beside her crown were exactly the ones who had seen it when she was wearing an apron. If this story moved you from beginning to end, smash that like button right now. Share part 2 with someone who has been waiting for a story worth watching all the way through. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss what this channel brings next, because we are just getting started and the next story is already being built. Drop in the comments, did you see Minjun coming? And did Segan's reason surprise you? I want every theory, every reaction, every feeling this story gave you. Write it below. I read every single one. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying until the end. See you in the next story.